Deck Direct. I'm here at True North Composites, where composite decking is made. And we're going to have a factory tour today so that you at home know how it's made all the way from the raw material to the end product. So come on in and let's take a tour. Hi folks, I'm here with John Henson, who's the VP of Sales and Marketing at True North Composites. And he's going to teach us a little bit about composite decking. But first, what I want to know is, what's in a composite deck? What's it made of?
Well, composite decking is made of a natural fiber. So we use a rice hull fiber. That's one of the distinguishing factors between True North decking and a lot of the other brands on the market. We don't put sawdust in our board. The reason we do that is it doesn't absorb water. It won't attract mold and mildew and soak up and swell up like some of the other composite boards on the market. So that's the main ingredient for our composite, and then we use plastic. So we use high density polyethylene. That's both on the core and on the capping of the product. That's around the surface. And the cap is the part that's going to protect the inside of the board. It's going to block the heat, so it's going to keep the board cooler. It's also got high molecular weight, high density polyethylene in it, which is going to make it more resistant to abrasion. So it's not going to show scratches, scuffs, and be more durable than other composite boards on the market that don't have that. So it's very inexpensive ingredient, so we don't put that throughout the board. We put that around the outside, so that's the part of the board you're going to see. It's going to be exposed to the elements. So we cap our boards on all four sides, on the sides and the bottom. That makes it a reversible board. This here is our fascia board. But you can flip the board over if it ever gets damaged. Or on stair stringers, you're going to see both sides of that on the angle. So that's a nice finished board on both sides.
So let me ask you something about the rice husk. Does that also, the fact that you don't use any wood filler, does that make it more fire retardant if you don't use the wood filler?
That is going to help, definitely. It's a Class B flame spread rating, so it's almost the best classification that you can get for flame spread. So
right.
It does help with that. On the profiles then, we have a solid board that doesn't have holes in the middle, and then we have a hollow board that takes about 30% of the weight out of the material. Still, both of them are capped on all four sides. It's still the same profile on the outside. It's still a 25-year warranty. Just one is a little lighter weight, so less material and less cost. So those are kind of the deck board profiles. Then we also have a square edge board that doesn't have a groove in the board. This would be an example of a square edge, and that would be used for your stair treads, picture framing around the outside of the deck, so you're not seeing that groove on the exposed edge of the board. These boards would be face screwed, so it doesn't have a groove to use a clip, but that way it's solid. It meets building code for stair treads. They want to see it screwed in. And it also could be used for feature boards, or if you're building a dock, you can face screw that into your dock system, so it's great for that as well.
So one of the things I understand is that not only can you use composite for decking, but you can use it for composite fencing as well. So what do we have here?
That's correct. This is our slide and go fencing system. Another thing you can use it for is privacy screens. So right here you have two 4-foot sections. It's essentially our deck board that fits in there. So you got a 1-inch board. It's neighborhood friendly. Your neighbor's going to get the same finish on their side. So it looks good for both of you. It's a 20-year warranty on the post and the fence system because it's aluminum powder coated. So it's going to last. It's not going to rot and fall over like a wooden fence. And yes, you can go up to 6-foot sections on that and build a beautiful fence all the way around your yard.
And does it come in the same colors as the composite as well?
Exactly, yeah. It can match your decking, or here you see a two-tone. You can mix and match. There's quite a bit of flexibility with it. But it can be the same color as your deck or an accent color to your deck.
Great. And so True North makes both a composite and there's something else called a PVC.
Correct.
So what's this PVC thing all about? How's that different from the composite?
So PVC doesn't have any fiber in it, so no rice hull. It's just a straight virgin PVC. It's not using recycled material. These are the colors we have in our PVC line. So there's 10 colors there. We have what we call hardwoods, which are variegated colors, and then we have solid colors at the bottom, our earth tones. So those are lower cost products, great for the look of painted wood. And then the hardwoods are more of a variegated, natural-looking wood color. The PVC is cellular in nature, so we're adding air to it, so it makes it really lightweight to work with, really nice to handle. It cuts faster and easier than composite, it also screws in easier than composite. Because we don't have a natural fiber, it has a lifetime warranty versus 25 years on the composite.
Right, so that's great. And they're pretty easy to install, in terms of is it clips that you use? And
yep, so we have some different clip options for the PVC. Same with the True North. On the composite side, we have a hidden clip system, so you don't see any screw holes. They can be taken out and adjusted. The boards can be flipped over on the composite and slid back in. And then we have a whole fascia system to screw on the fascia boards. So very concealed, faster. You're not seeing any of the screw holes or that kind of thing.
So I understand that one of the advantages of Clubhouse is that you can actually bend it. Is that the case? And what do we have here?
Yep, so this is an example of a curved application. Not everybody's to build a bench, but you could do a curved edge to your deck, curved stairs. Not everything in nature is square, so Clubhouse is the easiest board to bend. And we also cover it with our warranty. As you can see, it doesn't lose its wood grain pattern. The color doesn't have stress marks. You can bend other boards, but they're not going to be this easy, and you're not going to waste as many boards as you are on a composite or a competitor's product trying to bend them. So
great. And how do you actually get it to bend?
Yeah, so you would have a heating system. So there are contractors on the market that do this as a service, so you can build your deck and they can just do the curved boards for you. Or you can order the heating system if you're doing more of these. The investment pays back quite quickly, 1 or 2 decks. And having the heat system, so it's a heating blanket that heats the board up to 240 degrees Fahrenheit, so very hot. You have to wear gloves. It's not something that in nature the board would get up to that temperature, but with the heating system you can do it and then curve them into interesting designs.
Great. And if someone wants to get samples, they can obviously get them on compositedeckdirect.com. What are these boxes all about here? I understand we work with some contractors.
Correct. So these are contractor kits. So if you sell decks and you have to present them to clients, this will show you the different colors. It has all the different colors you see here in the display in the kit, as well as all the hardware, and it shows some of the different profiles as well. That helps you show your contractor, your customer, the different colors that they can choose to build their deck out of. And of course you can do accent colors and mix and match. In addition to the sample programs where you can just order them one at a time if you need to refill the boxes or any of that.
Great. Well, thanks, John. Really excited to see what's in the factory, to learn more about how it's actually made, how the product's mixed up, and how it's extruded, and how it's packaged. So let's go in the back and take a look. So we're right here at the beginning of the process of making a composite deck. So today we're at EPL Plastics, and this is where you get the recycled plastic to make the composite board. And John is going to take us through exactly what types of plastic is used for the composite deck and what this is all about.
So, yeah, as Julian said, this is EPL, so this is our sister company. It's all vertically integrated, so we're supplying ourselves with recycled material that meets our specification, and we go on the open market. We've been doing this for over 40 years, and we're buying recycled or off-spec products that hit bags or materials that didn't meet specification, so they had a packaging change, and we're going to turn that in from that kind of material. We're going to densify it, and then we're going to extrude it into a pellet, which then goes over to the extrusion facility and gets extruded into a deck board. So there's lots of different streams, different industries, and EPL also supplies other industries. So a lot of expertise, a lot of knowledge here that helps support the composite decking.
Yeah, and some of this plastic comes from plastic bottles. So you guys in effect take plastic bottles out of landfills and put them into the decking. Is that true?
That's right. Yeah, we would take them from the recycling stream, and yeah, an average deck of 12 by 12 would be about 12,000 water bottles that we're recycling to put back into the decking. So it keeps it out of the ocean, keeps it out of the environment, the landfill, and reuses it again to make a really good deck board.
Hi folks, so we're here at the beginning of the process to make a composite or PVC deck. In this case, this is the PVC material. And so this is what the raw material looks like that goes into a PVC board. It's kind of like, it's almost like a very fine powder.
That's virgin PVC. So we're gonna feed that into the extruder with this feeding system here, and then heat it up and extrude it into the deck board for sure.
So after the raw material is taken out of the bag, it gets put through a pipe system and it comes into this thing called the main extruder. Can you explain what this is all about, what it actually does?
So the main extruder is going to actually make the deck board. So it has screws in it, kind of like a corkscrew that works counter-cyclical, and they're going to force the material towards the front. As it's doing that, it's going to heat up with these heating panels and heat up the material so it's melted together. It's also going to bring in some other ingredients like a blowing agent. It's going to be activated and create a cellular bubbles in the deck board. As we get closer to the final step, we're going to put a capping on it. That capstock is a separate material. It's fed in by a separate extruder, all while it's still hot, getting fed and fused together all in one step. That's where the deck board will come out of the other end there.
Okay, so after all of the raw material comes out of the bags and goes into the extruder, I noticed a lot of water and a lot of noise. Like, what's actually happening here?
So the board is coming out in a soft form right now. It'll look like this, but it'll be very soft and pliable. So what we're doing is using chilled water. It's very cold and it's going to freeze the board and cool it down so that we can use it, cut it, and also put a pattern on it. You can see the board that's coming out doesn't have a embossing pattern on it yet. So that's got to be applied on a secondary step here.
Okay, so after the board is extruded, it goes through the water and it chills down a bit. It goes through this saw puller mechanism, which my understanding is it will cut the boards in certain lengths. What kind of board lengths do these products come in?
So they come in standard stocking lengths are 12 foot, 16 foot, 20 foot lengths. So we punch that length into the computer here, and that'll measure the board fairly accurately, but not perfectly. So we do give an extra inch to 2 inches, depending on the length of the board, so that you can trim it off, any damage, and also make the board exactly the length you need it.
Okay, so after the boards have been cut, you have to get the natural look pattern onto the board. So how does that actually work? How do you do that?
So we feed it into an embossing machine here. It's got heated rollers that are going to heat the board up again to get that pattern to stamp right into it. The other thing you'll notice is that it indexes, so the pattern is not the same on every board like it is on a lot of composite boards in the market. Clubhouse is going to have a different pattern for 100 boards before we repeat the same pattern again, because it's moving and changing on every single board.
You see it going in here right now, where it's going to get the pattern put on the board. Okay, so after the board has been extruded and the embossing has been done, over a period of time, there's some variability. I guess it gets to that sort of natural look of the product. And I notice you have some boards here, and this is over a week period. Is that my understanding?
This is over one production run, so the production team is going to keep a sample on every shift. So you are going to see some variance in color, lighter, darker, over time, and that gives the board an even more natural look. But the important thing is when you're installing the boards, lay them out so that they look nice and you mix up the variances, and it looks really natural that way. So that's something we do, and we do keep an eye on it. There is a window for lightness and darkness that they won't go outside of, but there's a little bit of variability.
Okay. So after you've gone through the embossing period and the extrusion period, it comes long silver shelf, which is the first line of defense for quality control. And once it goes through this quality control process, it goes on a shipping pallet to be sent right to the customer. Before it gets put on that shipping pallet, there's some checks and balances that True North does to ensure that the quality is there. And maybe John, you could speak to something about that.
So they're checking color consistency on the boards. They're checking the size dimensions to meet building code. We have regular inspections every few hours. They're also measuring the boards, the lengths, so all those specifications that they have to follow. And then they're checking each and every board and carrying them onto the pallet, which then gets wrapped with a UV wrapping. It's going to keep the board clean and cool and keep it out of the sun.
And I understand that there's additional quality control that you do behind the scenes in the True North Quality Control Lab. So why don't we go take a look at that and tell everyone how you do a little bit more on the quality side. Let's go. Great. So quality control is of utmost importance to True North. And we are right now inside the Quality Control Lab, where there is a series of testing that's done on an iterative basis to ensure that quality is met 100% of the time. So this particular machine that John's going to take us through really goes through the bendability and flexibility of the boards, and this is a contraption to show that, so maybe John can go into a little bit more detail about how this works.
Yeah, so not only do we test it now, but we've already tested the plastic we used because we own the recycling facility that supplies the plastic for True North. We've done the same test on just the plastic, but now that it has a rice hull and it's a composite deck board, we're going to do the test on here. And what this is going to do is it's tied into the computer. It's going to put 1,000 to 2,000 pounds of force on the board, and it's going to measure how much resistance there is. It's going to make sure the board doesn't break prematurely before the right amount of weight is there. It's going to test the flexibility of it and then give us a reading back, and that ensures our boards are always going to meet the building code and also our own internal specifications, which exceed building code standards. So every board, every 2 hours we're going to take a board, it's going to come in on the lab cart there and then get put onto the tester and tested to make sure we're continuously meeting that standard.
So apart from the flexibility and the strength of the board, what other types of quality control procedures do you go through?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, we do a lot of them on the plastic in the lab, but we'll also do sift tests on our rice hull fibers, so we're checking the size of the fibers. We want long enough fibers that they actually add strength to the board, and we're separating out any dust because that's not adding strength. So that's a test we do. We're taking a lot of weights on the boards to make sure there's enough material in there. We do ash tests, so we're going to burn the board and then measure how much material is left over, any fillers that are in the plastic, because there are cheaper and different grades of plastic on the market, but we're going to make sure we're using a high quality, high density polyethylene to make a good quality deck board. So those are some of the tests. We check straightness with the jig here. So we're going to put a deck board on there and measure how straight the boards are. And then we have a microscope further down that's going to check the cap thickness and take measurements very, very precisely on the deck boards. And then there's an oven and a freezer, and we're going to do freeze thaw tests. We're going to do expansion contraction testing to show the expansion contraction on the boards, because they do expand and contract, but we have a tolerance and we make sure it's staying within that specification.
Great. Unlike the PVC, the composite boards are made a little bit differently. They actually go through a drying process where the fibers, such as the rice husks, are blended into the formulation. And John's going to briefly talk about that.
So the dryer here behind me is the natural gas drum dryer. So that whole drum is going to turn, and we're going to shoot a flame through there and dry out the rice hull. So there's no moisture in there. We don't want that in the board. When it freezes and thaws, that would create issues. And that's another thing that separates us from some of the other manufacturers. So all of that is controlled by a computer feed system, which is state-of-the-art in the industry. Every 5 seconds, we're taking a reading of what's going into the board to measure out exactly with the computer what's going in and making sure the right ingredients are in there. So that's the right formulation. So these are examples, some of the feed systems. Like I said, it's all computer controlled, so it's feeding from our different silos with our different ingredients in it. Some different views here, but that shows all the different feeders feeding the stuff into the extruder, and then it's going to feed into the extrusion machine to make a deck board the right way every time.
So after the boards have been manufactured, they get put on a pallet, and they got taken into the back warehouse, outdoor warehouse, I guess you could say. And so, can you tell us a little bit about how it's packaged up for safety and to ensure that it's not damaged on shipping and that sort of thing?
Yep, for sure. So first of all, we use the plastic edge protectors, one of the strongest ones in the industry that any company is using. So those protect it from the forks as much as we can. And then we also use the cardboard protectors that are reinforced with plastic on the inside. They're made of recycled plastic. So that protects the boards. And then we have lumber in between. It's a hardwood piece of wood with a slot in there to hold the strap in place. And they're strapping every 2 feet, which is also how the board should be stored. If there's not enough wood in between or support under the boards, they're going to follow the shape of how they're stored. So that's important. And then if there are wraps, it's good to keep them covered out of the sun so they're not overly hot when you're installing the top boards, and then the next board can be further underneath because that will affect how they're installed.
And if you do order through Composite Deck Direct, one option that you do have is to actually pick up the product right at the factory, right here in the outdoor warehouse, and or have it shipped directly to your house or job site. So there are those two options there for people that order the product locally. So that's another added benefit from working with Composite Deck Direct.